David Parker.
Thank you for the call, Mr Chairman. I want to address two things. The first one won't take long. The first one is I would like to know whether this new closing date for submissions of 28 February 2014 effectively puts out submissions that were made after that date. Are there submissions that were made after the 28th of February 2014 that, because of this fixed date now being imposed, are not going to be heard and do not have rights in the process? And if so, how many are there? Because I think that's very relevant to the decision that we're taking here as to whether we agree that new date. The other point I want to make, sir, is in respect of clause 1712 and also section 115 JA, which is a consequential amendment set out in the schedule. Mr Chairman, the contrast here is to be made with what's happening in Christchurch. In Christchurch, they had a need for a new plan as well as a consequence of the earthquake. There was recognition that the normal plan-making processes would take too long. Normal plan-making processes include appeals to the Environment Court, and at the Environment Court, people have rights of cross-examination, and they can go into both the facts and the law. Now, the reason that that process is being truncated in Christchurch is that they need a new plan. That would take too long, and so there is some justification for shortening the process. There's also, I think, widespread recognition across most parts of the House that actually it does take too long to make RMA plans under the RMA. They take longer to make than it takes us to change a law in Parliament, and therefore democratically elected local government officials can't be elected on a platform and implement it, because by the time the next election comes around, they still haven't finished the plan change, which seems a bit nonsensical. Now, against that, of course, there is the need to protect the private interests and the legitimate interests of both private people and also public organisations. And why is that? Well, you know, plans have enormous effects. They have multi-million-dollar effects. You know, whether you can subdivide land, how many stories you can build on a land, whether you can put a flat down below, all of these things have million-dollar consequences, very expensive consequences. They also have lifestyle effects. If you're allowed to have a commercial zone right next to you, then you're going to have to put up with a bit more noise and traffic. If you have a bar next to you that's going to be operating all hours of the night, then that has an effect on you. These things have effect on people. So what is the change of that of those effects if you haven't got a right to a fair process? Now, when you have more than two people on a committee, the chances are the different concerns that are raised by people as to process are going to be more likely to be considered, particularly if you've got a lawyer involved. And this is where I want to go back to the Christchurch plan. This Parliament protected against unfair process by ensuring that Justice Hanson, a former High Court judge, is in charge of that process there, and therefore is more likely to impose upon his hearing panels, especially when he's there, but even when he's not there and he's authorising other forms of subsets of the hearing panel to hear submissions, it's more likely to be a fair process. Here, the hearing process retrospectively can be down to two people, and the chairperson doesn't have to be there. That's what we're doing in respect of 1712. We're saying that the chairperson doesn't have to be there. So, Mr Chairman, I want to hear from the Minister as to what assurances we can have that in respect of these smaller panels, we're going to still have a fair process. This is heightened by the provisions in 115 JA, where it says the hearings panel may make recommendations to the Council in respect of a particular topic. So if I'm concerned about a particular topic, I go along to a hearings panel and they don't even refer my concerns back to the Council. What remedy have I got? Because they don't have to make recommendations in respect of my submission or the topic that I may raise. And I've got no appeal rights to the Environment Court because we've truncated them. I've had no cross-examination rights at the original hearings panel to highlight my concern or to show that some other information that's being presented to the Council committee is wrong. So my rights have been severely truncated as a person whose life could be affected by the fact that I have a tannery put up next door to my residential section, depending on where the planning line is drawn, or if I'm a person who wants to bring forward affordable housing, I can't do it because the minimum lot size is too high or the prohibition on multi-storey buildings is inappropriate around a transport node. All of these things have incredibly important things, not on just the individual, but society as a whole, given the need that we have for more affordable housing in Auckland. So, Mr. Chairman, I would like to hear from the Minister in response to those concerns that I have as to the fairness of the process, particularly given that we don't have...
I call